Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Life Unfiltered. I'm your host Faz. Today's episode is incredibly emotional and I'm at a loss for words. The guest on my podcast today is my very own sister, Farahana, who is a 2-time breast cancer survivor. That's not her identity. She has so much more to tell you. She's a death doula. She is a children's book author. She's a mindfulness coach. I can't tell you enough about how incredible she is. Please listen to this episode. If you're dealing with anything to do with cancer yourself or a loved one, if anyone you know is transitioning through life right now, is on their deathbed, has a terminal disease, this is really something that you need to listen to. Farahana has so many tools to share with you and so much insight. So enjoy this episode, leave us a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to my podcast, Far.
It's so crazy, right? Because every time I watch you, I'm like, I want to be on that couch sooner rather than later.
Well, for those of you who don't know, my sister is visiting from the States, and we got a slot in this incredible, very busy studio of mine. And yeah, Farahana hasn't been to Kenya in, I believe, over 8 years?
About 7 now.
7.
Yeah.
And I started this podcast, and I'm just really hoping that she can be on it. She has such an incredible story. So I'm really, really happy that you're here today.
Thanks for having me. And thanks to the universe for aligning it.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit about how you felt being back after such a long time.
Kenya has changed. Nairobi has changed tremendously. I mean, I feel really disoriented when we're driving around, because I'm like, where are we? It's really hard to tell kind of where we are, just the development.
Of course.
The traffic is definitely a lot crazier. So it's taking a little bit longer to get to places that would take typically a very short period of time, but home is home, so it's really nice to be here.
And you're also you're in this very healing space, like what you do in the States. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do in the healing space, like the mindfulness. And, I said it in the intro, but you've published your own children's book, which has mindfulness in it. So if you can tell us a little bit about that. And if you've noticed that Kenya is kind of catching up, like we have a lot of mindfulness here, we have a lot of sound healing. So, that must be a bit of a shock to you too.
It really is. It really is. But I feel like it's given me a light at the end of the tunnel. In the near future, moving here seems definitely like a possibility. Mm-hmm. Whereas before, I just feel like over the last 15 years of being in Texas, it's just felt like an entirely different world. And so I didn't know if I could really connect with people, because I just, all those things, when you go through your healing journey, you almost find a cocoon where you find your community, you find your people, you find the places and spaces you go to. But coming back to Nairobi and actually realizing that it's coming here, it just feels like the world is going through a shift, and more people are coming into their own healing and doing their inner work. And so I feel like also the vibe that you present and the vibe that you've become, your vibe attracts your tribe. So you will find those people.
Sure. I like that. Your vibe attracts your tribe. I feel like I'm doing that right now. Attracting a lot of people in that space. So tell me a little bit about what is mindfulness for those people out there who don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think very few people would not know, but yeah, just for the purpose of addressing this. So mindfulness is really just the awareness of the present moment. It's allowing the present moment to just be without judgment, and allowing curiosity rather than judgment to be your friend in those moments. So just awareness of the now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think let's just get into the deep end, right?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do
so
it.
You're which is incredibly emotional to say, but a 2-time breast cancer survivor. First of all, what does that even mean?
It means,
like in basic terms.
Yeah, a 2-time breast cancer survivor means I've had cancer 2 times in my life, and clearly survived it both times.
And I remember the first time that you were diagnosed with breast cancer, it was the most shocking thing I think the entire family had ever heard. And you just don't understand how to digest that information. What was it like for you when you first found out that you had breast cancer?
So many people have asked me that question, and In a very weird way, it just wasn't surprising. I think I was caught more off guard is it was like the formality of the presentation of it, receiving a phone call and being told that, you have breast cancer, like it was official. But I kind of look at cancer as a mindset also, right? Like we can have cancerous thoughts that are negative, right? And we have all those coming up throughout our lives. And so the fact that I was diagnosed officially with breast cancer was really a reflection of the relationship that I had with my breast, those cancerous, rejecting thoughts that I had towards my breast. And so the formal diagnosis, I'd spent the last 5 years before that, I'd gone through divorce. And so I was on my healing journey and it turned into a very spiritual journey. And so I kind of felt like, and I was explaining this to somebody, you know how you can have, it's almost like an apron. It's like a belt, but it's an apron and it has these little pockets and you put different tools in it.
Like a tool belt.
Like a tool belt.
Sure.
And so during those 5 years, I feel like tools like mindfulness and understanding how disease manifests into the body, dis-ease manifests in the body as a disease. Like all these nuggets were being put, like these tools were putting into my tool belt. And so during those 5 years, I came to understand myself so much, get so much more self-awareness and understand the healing process that I felt like I was already pretty prepared. I don't think you can completely prepare yourself,
sure,
but there were certain mindset tools that I'd already established, and it was actually coaching and teaching. So that really informed my journey and led me in all the ways.
I'm just going to take you back a step because I think you said something very important. You said your relationship with your breasts. So if we can just elaborate on that, like what did you mean by that? You almost said like you were expecting, like it wasn't out of the ordinary, or you weren't surprised that you were diagnosed with breast cancer because you had a certain relationship with your breasts.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah. So growing up, I had a very negative relationship with my breasts. I remember all of the sisters saying, if we had breasts like yours, we would be wearing all kinds of outfits and stuff. And I was very conservative. I was always covering my breasts. And that wasn't because I was necessarily a conservative person. I had experienced childhood trauma and been molested as a child, and so I never really addressed that. Back in the day, we're in our 40s now. So imagine like when you're 10 and 12 years old, when things like that happened, it wasn't something that we really talked about. We didn't have the tools to talk about it. Our parents didn't know how to talk about it, certainly mom. And so it was kind of like shoved under the rug. And so my emotions and my trauma about it were shoved under the rug. And it was only when the diagnosis came that it really surfaced. But I realized that throughout that time from, between 12 and in my 40s, my every decision on how to dress, my relationship with my breasts, covering them, all of that stemmed from that trauma because I had felt that they had attracted negative attention and that if I covered them and if I was in essence protecting myself from those negative ways of looking at my body. And so, that just came to be. So I remember receiving that phone call and then I put the phone down and mom said, "What did they say?" And I, in a very not surprised tone, I'm like, "It's breast cancer." And so that's kind of where that journey started because it wasn't just dealing with the fact that I have this disease now, but it was resurfacing a trauma and almost like laying it on a plate and saying, it's time to deal with this. So
I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper so we can get really vulnerable here because I think this is really important for people out there to hear, is that how something in childhood and being either sexually molested or abused or whatever it might be, whatever the tag is, can really start to manifest into something a lot bigger if you don't deal with it in childhood, or at least in your formative years. So going back, how old do you think you were? If I was to remember, I think you were about, 12 maybe?
Yeah, that's the number that comes to mind because I remember it was a teacher and I was, we would always go for extra math help or whatever. And so, it was at somebody's residence, a teacher's residence.
And you were there alone?
So there were other students there, but he would always put me in a separate room, which I always found really bizarre. And I think that's also really important when we're talking to young children is to really know. And I mean, we have that gut feeling. We have that intuitive like voice that says, you know, something is not right. And quite frankly, it's better that you read it wrong and still protect yourself than say, oh, I think I'm just, you know, being melodramatic and, you know, so I think
not protect yourself. Remember, it's at that point, it's your parent protecting you.
Yeah.
So it's also the parent probing a little bit and not just assuming that the child is in a safe space because they're in school or they're with a teacher. That's not necessarily a safe space.
Right.
So anyway, going back to this story of yours. So you were always in a room.
I was always put in a room separately, and he would walk up to me from behind, and it would almost be like he's coming to check my work, but he would be putting slobbery kisses on either one of my cheeks, and I was just like, what is going on? And I would go back home and I tell mom that, you know, this is what he's doing. And she was like, no, you know, he's old enough to be your grandfather. Right. And, you know, even culturally, you know, it just felt like he was from the same cultural background as us. Like, we don't do this kind of thing, right?
Of course, and it was a different time at that time, right? Like, I mean, this was 3 decades ago.
Yeah.
So it's also a different generation. It's also a different relationship that people had with their peers or their teachers or their, you know, older guardians, for example. It wasn't as, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't as out there as it is now. You know, kids didn't have access to what they have now to say that, okay, these things are not actually okay.
Yeah.
So there's no blame on parents or guardians.
Yeah.
It's just being able to be open that this is what transpired.
Yeah.
Right? Let's go a little bit deeper into this. So he would have these slobbery kisses, and then how did it get worse than that?
So then one day he came and like I remember him putting his hand down my shirt, and I don't know that I was quite wearing a bra at that time.
Probably not at the age of 12.
Yeah, not yet. And I remember him putting his hand on my right breast, which was, you know, as a 12-year-old, whatever that had developed into, you know. And I remember just being utterly mortified. I remember that day it was raining very, very heavily when mom came to pick us up, and she came in the little pickup, and I got in the car, and immediately I told her what happened, and she was so angry. And she's like, I'm going to go inside and talk to him. I'm like, you're absolutely not going to do that. You know, I was like, we have to get out of here. And there was no way that I was going to let her go in.
I know. And I mean, I think I must have been, if you were 12, I was 13 and a half at the time. And I still remember being so livid, but I remember being angry for many years after. And like really feeling guilty that I couldn't do anything about it and couldn't protect you. And every time I thought about him, like there was a lot of like these feelings that came up, which I'm sure obviously, you know, this was your experience, but through you, I picked up on a lot of the negativity and the resentment, almost the hatred towards this person. And I would always like have visions of what I would do to him if I ever saw him again. Just for the record, he has passed on.
Has he?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
I don't know. I don't know how I know that. I think I really did some digging to find out if he had passed on or not, because I think, I had a lot of anger. A lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is the first time you've told me that. I have no idea.
I don't know why I haven't told you that.
Whew. That.
He has passed on.
Wow.
Okay, so going back. So this happened to you. You started to feel that that part of your body attracts attention, negative attention, obviously, because that was a negative incident that happened to you. So you would always cover. And I remember this because you grew up. We have 3 younger sisters. I have 3 younger sisters, and you were the only one who actually had nice, large breasts, and the rest of us. Well,
nice is
well, according to me, it was nice because I didn't have any. So I was always, I always admired the fact that you had them. But of course, like you said, you don't realize that everyone grows up in the same household, in a different household. Everyone grows up in the same house, but different.
Yeah.
There's a way to say that. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. But yeah, my body dysmorphia was completely different. I was very conscious that I didn't have breasts. And I was very conscious that when I was with people, I wasn't good enough because I didn't have this one asset that everybody wanted or was attracted to.
Yeah.
So it just shows that, things manifest in a different way.
So what you had, I wanted, and what I had, you wanted.
Right.
And I think we would say this all the time. Like, I'm like, take them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would always, what was really crazy is, I remember saying my entire life, right? From when my breast started developing and getting really big, is I wish I was flat. I wish I was flat. Mm-hmm. I remember just being infuriated and so angry and frustrated in changing rooms when I was either trying on a swimsuit or buying a bra. It was just the most annoying experience.
I mean, it was annoying for me because I kept looking for stuff that was padded.
Right.
So it was really annoying because I didn't have a good experience because I was always looking for something that would make me look bigger, and you were always looking for something that would make you look smaller in a sense.
Right.
Okay, so back to the breast cancer. So once you found out, you were very aware that this was something that you had manifested, I think, pretty much your whole life.
Yeah. I mean, I realized what a powerful person I am. Like, wow. I mean, this literally, the dis-ease of my childhood manifested into disease in my body, which, the body keeps the score, and I won't even try and pronounce the author's name. But those are, like I said, when I was coming into this space of healing and really understanding myself and reading these books. And one of those, that book also, The Body Keeps the Score, came about, and it just, everything made so much sense, right? Mm-hmm. And I think just making sense of it, because when something sudden like that happens, when you have a diagnosis, you don't have it in the family, I wasn't genetically disposed to it, and none of that. So then you start to wonder how, why, where. And, with all the research being done and just, books like this, you really begin to understand in a great way the power that we have. And so if we have the power to make ourselves sick, then I think that we also have the power within ourselves to heal.
Sure.
And that's profound, right? That's huge. So taking that and allowing it not to be necessarily a cancer diagnosis, but really an invitation to heal what had been waiting to be addressed for so long. I just didn't have the tools. I was way too young, but this was an opportunity. And so even receiving that diagnosis of breast cancer wasn't scary. It was an invitation to start healing what had been left unattended. And that's literally how I took it. I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma with estrogen, progesterone positive, and HER2 negative. And I mean, I say that, I actually don't know what any of that means. But, needless to say, I kind of even changed my relationship and my understanding of that diagnosis of IDC, because I just recreated a whole new acronym of IDC saying I've been diagnosed with infinite divine connection. Yes. So it was literally a part of my spiritual journey.
I think say that again a little bit slower. So people, if there's anyone watching who does have that diagnosis, they can just start to change their mindset.
That narrative, right? Yeah. So invasive ductal carcinoma is a very IDC. Common diagnosis, IDC. And so I told my son, I was like, you know what? I have been diagnosed with infinite divine connection. And that's what I would do is, it was in 2020 when I was diagnosed. And so you weren't allowed to have anybody come for the appointments with you, right? So you were like literally moving in solitude, and it was very scary and all of that. And so, social distancing and stuff. So I remember I'd go to a breast clinic, and if I saw someone wearing a hat that said Jesus loves you, that was a little winky wink, I would think, for my infinite divine connection. And I would be like, can I take a picture of your hat? But I would collect these experiences and actually look forward to my appointments, because during those times, I felt this was my intimate time with my companion, who you couldn't really see, but you could feel through all the nuggets and clues that was being left behind. And I just immersed myself in that. Like, that could be a completely made up story, but for me, that was a very real story.
I don't think it's made up. I think it's a really beautiful way of seeing it. I think there must millions of people are going through some sort of an illness, whether it's cancer or something else.
Yeah.
And being able to see that as, your time to connect with source.
Yeah.
And that connection and being at, I can only imagine going for your doctor's appointments or for treatment or for tests. Like that's a time in your life where there's so much of this going on.
Yeah.
And being able to say, like, I love that, how you said, like, it's so beautiful to say that you have your invisible partner or your companion, that being God, and being able to say that God's with me and holding my hand, and then looking for those little signs that God has shown up, whether it's a hat or it's, for me, it's like butterflies or a rainbow, whatever it might be, like, looking for those little signs and being able to connect to the source through those signs. And the source is always there giving you signs. We just have to open our eyes and pay attention.
You have to be aware and be present and
be mindful.
Be mindful. I remember one of my particularly favorite stories is I had gone to the breast clinic in Dallas, and I had to get a biopsy done. This was before my diagnosis. And there was a neighbor of ours who was an oncology nurse, and her name is Mary Lou, and she was our landlord, and she passed away actually before I was finding out what was going on. But she had told me when I told her that I had bloody nipple discharge, right? I never felt a lump, by the way, so I had blood coming out of my nipple. Okay. And so I'd gone and mentioned it to her, and her being an oncology nurse, as well as not a breast cancer patient, but a cancer patient. I don't remember what kind of cancer she had. She said, Farahana, you better go and check it out. And so I had gone to the breast clinic. By then she had passed away. And I was sitting there reading one of my favorite books, right, which is Neil Donald Walsh's Conversation with God, book 1. And on page 410, sorry, I nerd out on Neil, but there was a paragraph that basically says that at times you will, and I paraphrase, right, at times you will come to forget who you are. And so call on me and I will remind you who you are, right? I love that. And so I kind of closed the book for a moment and I said, all right, God. I said, I'm in a waiting room to find out if I have, to get this biopsy and find out if I have breast cancer. Obviously, all energy, all the patients that are waiting, energies are angst up here. I'm like, I know you, but, just kind of give me something. And actually it wasn't conversations with God. I'm sorry. It was friendship with God. Okay. And so I closed the book.
Is that his book as well?
That's also his book. Yeah, Neil
book
Donald
2,
Walsh's.
I think.
No, it's separate from the trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Friendship with God.
Okay,
and look, everybody, if you're listening, go to the closest bookstore, go on Amazon, order Friendship with God. And so page 410. And so I close it for a moment and I said, listen, I'm going to tell this story. I'm like sitting here. Give me a sign. Give me some clue that you're here. And Faz, like, I kid you not, I had this book closed and I look up and social distancing, like few rows over, there's a girl sitting and like the show Friends. Yeah. Like this person's literally wearing a Friends t-shirt. Right. And I'm like, there's no way. So I go up to her, still maintain social distancing. And I'm like, excuse me. I said, I have to tell you. I said, this is not a coincidence, Yeah. Probably got a picture as well. And I said, can I get you to read this paragraph? And the girl, she started crying. Wow. And she's like, I really needed to read that paragraph. And I said, well, I really needed you to be wearing this t-shirt. Right. And then just in that moment, they're like, Farahana, and they called me in and they hand me over this gown and they're like, wear the gown and we'll call you into the biopsy room. And she's like, if you need anything else, she's like, my name is Mary Lou. Oh, wow. Now, Mary Lou had passed away. Right. And that was your landlord and that was my landlord who, and so I'm freaking out because there's like an overload of signs. And so I asked this nurse, I was like, I need to talk to Mary Lou. And she's like, oh, don't worry. She's going to be in the biopsy room with you during the procedure. She'll be with you the whole time. So, these, I mean, I have plenty of stories. I really do need to sit down and write my book. You do. But it's these moments where you pay attention, and that's the message here, right? Is that just be open, because even in the most dire, scary situations of our life, I think that's when we need that spirit, that essence, that God, whatever you want to call the higher power. But that's, being open. I think I have a lot of grief and sadness, but understanding yet for people who go through a diagnosis, who received a diagnosis, and they could be the most spiritual, religious person ever. But when something like this happens, it's been taken as a punishment. Sure. And so that's really hard. I was at the Aga Khan Hospital talking to the oncology department, and like the most difficult part for patients most often is there's spiritual disconnection when something like this happens. Because there's a taboo around it where people feel, and the stigma around it is that you got punished because you did something wrong. Now the family starts to believe it, and the spouses start to believe it, and the caregivers start to believe it, and the world starts
you
to
probably
believe
go
it.
into
Then
like
you
this,
internalize it.
yeah, and you go into a negative space where healing is so difficult because you're looking at it as a punishment. How do you heal from a punishment rather than healing from a blessing? And I'm sure it doesn't, to a lot of people, it doesn't feel like a blessing, but there's a blessing in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
You know, there's, like you said, you're learning to release the trauma that you've been carrying since childhood.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you, so you decided to have a double mastectomy.
Well, in 2020, I actually had a lumpectomy, and that was a very important decision for me because first my plan was attack because I hated them. So I'm like, we're going to get rid of them.
Right.
But then I realized, Farahana, you are still attacking, right? You attack through thoughts, you attack through words, and now you're going to attack through action, right? And that's where you're coming from. And I was like, oh, that's right. I'm being more reactive. So I wasn't being mindful at all, right? My amygdala was on override. So after realizing that, coincidentally but not, there was an equine therapy retreat that I attended. And at that time was the first time that I spoke with that equine therapist and really talked about what had happened to me as a little girl.
Okay, before we go any further, can you explain what
equine therapy is? So, I mean, I'll say it in the most simplest way from what I know. It's healing with horses.
Okay.
So,
and I think that's actually huge. I mean, you took me for a session, and this was many years ago, and it was incredible. I believe they do that here too.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, so just tell us a little bit about what that felt like.
You know, the horse, there's several horses on the farm or, you know, in the stable. Well, you know, kind of they're out in the grass. So, and they basically intuitively volunteer. Each horse, one horse, volunteers, he or she will come and be the healer.
Okay.
As a Reiki practitioner, I've been told that horses are like the ultimate Reiki master. So they're very intuitive. They can feel the energy. They choose to come. Right. Then they're going to spend a lot of time, if you recall your session as well, kind of just really engaging with you, right? Just, you know, being really physically close, right? And just being that energy around and just kind of working like that. I mean, I would hate to butcher anything else, you know, by trying to say something about equine therapy that I'm not really familiar with. But as a recipient, I found that moment to be very helpful. And then there was some talking through it as well. And she, the therapist asked me, like, if he was sitting in front of you, what would you say to him? And I actually had no words to say to him. There's just a lot of anger to the person who, you know,
molested you, abused you,
who molested me.
Yeah,
and there was no words to come out, so it was just a lot of anger.
Right.
And so I remember, because you know, in Dallas there's so many mosquitoes during summertime, and I had a bottle of off spray, and I just took it, and with all my force I just threw it. She had a little stuffed toy that she placed on a chair opposite me, and I just threw it, and the bottle actually, like the top just broke off. And then there was that rope. What are those? You know, CrossFit. You know, the heavy ropes.
It's the battle ropes.
Yeah. So of course you know this. I know nothing about it. But she just said, take that rope and just, you know. And I was just going like this, and just a lot of release and a lot of release, and that was over a weekend. And so by Monday, I had a phone call with my breast surgeon, and she was going to ask me, you know, what choice had I made? Do I want a lumpectomy, which is where they just go and remove the cancer and extra margins of the breast, you know, breast tissue, to make sure that they've got it all? Or do I want to have a mastectomy? And I was very clear in the fact that we were going to have a lumpectomy.
And then at that point, did your relationship with your breast change? No? You still felt very negative towards them? You still felt like you needed to do some healing? Okay.
And I think that's, it still comes up.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Because I really tried. You know, I really did.
Yeah.
And I feel like I hated them even more. You know, I wrote a poem about them. So first of all, you know, they were not exactly equal sized before. And then the surgery made it even more uneven. So like, oh my gosh, like going to buy bras again, you know, it's like you have a B cup and a D cup, and it's like, oh my gosh, like this is just not working, you know? And so it wasn't even, and I remember in 2022, I had COVID, and so I was at home and I was going for a shower, and I stood in front of the mirror and I didn't have anything on at the top. And I just started to grab at them, like I just want them off. And there was so much rage and so much anger and so much disgust that I just wanted to be free. Like I didn't feel like my soul was in the vessel that it belonged in, which is the weirdest thing. And that probably had a lot to do with, had a lot to do with, you know, just the unhealed part of it, right? So within a month, you know, during my checkup, I was told, excuse me, that I had...
Sorry, I'm going to take you back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think I'm thinking more in terms of maybe somebody out there who's going through this at the moment, right? And do you feel like, I know you had this very negative relationship with your breast, but do you feel like after the first lumpectomy, is that what it's called?
The lumpectomy.
Okay. If you had changed your relationship with your breast, do you believe that this would have still manifested? Maybe it would have. You know, I guess it's very difficult to answer that question, but I'm just wondering, like, you know, for people who are going through this, like to give themselves a little bit more love and care.
Yeah.
Because you're specifically telling me that you're in the shower and you're just like, I want these off. And, you know, God's like, okay, you want them off.
Yeah.
I'll help you with that.
Yeah.
But maybe if people just change that relationship a little bit.
Yeah.
To be able to give themselves a little bit more love and care.
You know, I think I would talk about it because I can't say definitively, right?
Of course.
Like
of course.
the cause and effect, right? What I can say is and stress the importance of accepting and loving ourselves
exactly
from day one. And I think that my biggest challenge now, when I talk to patients and talk to young girls and even young boys and literally everything in between, right? Our gender spectrum is very diverse now. But with anybody is that we have so much exposure. At that time, there was no social media.
Sure, exactly.
You know, we were just looking at ourselves, or maybe looking at our best friend, or you know, maybe a magazine article or something, right?
I mean, we barely looked in the mirror, if you remember.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember
we were
being
playing
a kid.
outside.
But I remember being a kid, and I think the only time we looked in the mirror is like in the morning when you were brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
And then, you know, at school, if you're washing your hands, like there was no cell phones. You're not taking selfies. You're not constantly obsessing about how you look and how you, and like you said, you know, comparing yourself not only to your peer group, but also to a wider audience all over social media.
Exactly. And so, you know, now with that exposure, I think that's where we need to start working and having age-appropriate conversations. Like one of the biggest things that I want to do is to go into schools and go into churches and go into places and spaces where young children are. Because there's so much bullying. I mean, I'm in the United States, but I know there's bullying everywhere, right? And just this constant, like what I'm supposed to look like. But do it, you know, I think it's across the board. Here's the challenge I think that I'm also faced with is that young girls are looking at their moms. If their moms have a problem with the way they look and are trying to correct things and have all kinds of fixer-upper appointments, right, at 11 o'clock, then that girl is looking at herself. And if she has features like her mom, like, oh, you look like your mom, well, she knows that she's going to run into the same quote-unquote problems that her mom is rejecting right now. And so, I mean, we are role models for for our children. And so the messages and the scripts of what we're supposed to look like, unfortunately, you don't even need the social media. It could be the very adult in your life that's struggling with his or her own body dysmorphia.
Right.
And so that kind of then spreads across. And it's plain and simple. my negative relationship with my body dictated the decision that I made for my surgery. Anybody's relationship with their body is going to dictate how they look at themselves in the mirror and what they're going to choose to get fixed and what they're going to choose to accept. It's as simple as that.
But do you think some of that came from mom? Like, I also remember mom having, breasts and being quite conscious of it, but maybe that's also from generational, her being older, our background. But I always remember like her, I don't want to say projecting, but like every time you would have like a low cut top. Like I remember, I don't know if you remember this one time. Was it New Year's? I don't remember what it was.
She'd always look at me and she'd be like, "You're going to go like that?"
But you were wearing that
after you would have given me the best compliment.
No, but I don't know if you remember this particular day, because you were wearing a black top of mine.
Okay.
And like you had a little bit of cleavage showing.
Yeah.
And I was wearing this green thing.
And it was
the onesie. And I had, my top was like, I think the neckline was down to here.
Yeah.
And because I'm very flat chested, I guess she never really said anything to me. But then with you, it was just like, literally, I think it was like down to here. And you had like the tiny bit of cleavage. And mom was like, put a pin on. And I was like, why does she have to put a pin on? Like, look at me.
I remember that.
Like, why can I walk around with like literally looking like I have nothing on?
I remember that.
And you were told to put a pin on your shirt.
It would irk me so much because I remember that you would be like, oh my God, that top looks so good on you. If you want to keep it, it's yours.
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't look like
exactly
that on you, right? And it was
I have to be wearing like a padded bra and like stuff things inside my chest to look like I have anything.
And it was so hard to receive compliments from you, from the safest people. If it was anybody else, it would be like, oh, dirty eyes. But from my sisters, but then my mom's critique of it, just like I so wanted to believe that. I so wanted to believe that it was okay to step out of the house looking like that.
Right. And that's my whole point, is I think your body image and dysmorphia didn't only just come from you and your abuser. It did.
Yes.
But I think it was accentuated by the fact that we have parents that were very conservative. Again, I say conservative, but I mean, it was different because what I wore and what you wore was different, and I revealed a lot more and you didn't. So I don't know what it was, but I think that accentuated the fact that, because maybe it was because you had large breasts, you have to cover them up. But because I don't,
it's okay.
It's okay.
Exactly.
I don't have anything to show, so it's fine. Like, she doesn't have anything. But that also added to my own body image, but that's a story for another day. But
we might have to
part 2 of this podcast to talk about different body dysmorphia and body image issues. But yeah, I think that was it for you. And okay, so then you went on to find out that you had breast cancer the second time.
Yeah, after like tugging on them and saying, we need to go, kind of thing, within a month. And it was just, spotting continued. So it was just like this really not normal. And I kind of felt like I was trying to really force them to take this seriously, but eventually they're like, you do. So I don't know that they caught all of it. Maybe they didn't remove all of it. I think for me, I was just grateful of the fact that it hadn't spread and it was literally a stage 0 cancer.
Right.
But at that point, there wasn't any alternative options for like further lumpectomy. And I wouldn't have even done further lumpectomy because that's going to make my boob even smaller. And that would make sense. But I don't think that surgically they can even do 2 lumpectomies. So, so then the choice was, remove your right breast completely. You don't have to remove the healthy breast, but remove the diseased breast or remove both. There was no way I was going to remove just one. That would just have added to further body dysmorphia, rejection. I very much admire women. There are a lot of women who have single mastectomies and, embrace that. But
you didn't even have a good relationship with your breasts anyway. So
actually, that was the worst side. That was the heavier side. So it's actually the boob that I really hated.
So it makes more sense that you wanted to get them both removed.
Yeah, I don't understand. This was the right breast was my favorite breast. I actually thought she was beautiful.
Well, at least you can say that.
And she got sick.
I guess you can say that now, but
at
the time, I don't know if you really believed that. Maybe you did, but
no.
I mean,
if somebody actually said, "Do you have a preference?"
I mean, if they
this one
said
is more beautiful, this one is all
so
kinds of
interesting.
things. Yeah.
Okay, so you got them both removed, and of course now, the normal question is, why didn't you get implants?
I think for me, immediately, I just knew that I didn't want anything fake in my body. I didn't want foreign objects in my body. It's not who I am. As a person, I wasn't going to do that. But I entertained all conversations and consultations with breast surgeons, plastic surgeons, to tell me what it was like. I held implants in my hand. They explained to me the process. Like, as soon as they remove the breast, they're gonna have these expanders put in, and then these expanders kind of like just hold the space under the skin,
Okay.
And then after some time of healing, you go in every week or whatever, and you get injected with saline. And so that's basically now expanding that space. And then you get to pick the perfect right size chest,
Right.
and then once you get there, then they do another surgery where they remove the expander and then they put the implant.
Okay.
Now, an implant, it has a shelf life, right? And so I just didn't want to ongoing, whether it's every 10 years or whatever. I just didn't want that.
Sure. And so now you've gone and you have a nonprofit. You want to talk about your nonprofit a little bit?
Yeah. So after everything was said and done, I don't know. The name just came from the universe's creativity. Flaunt Flat Revolution is my 501c3 registered in Dallas, Texas. And it's part of a community we call ourselves Flatties, that really embrace their bodies and just come through with that body positivity message. And International Flat Day is a real thing on October the 7th. And so, we went to Paris for that. But our nonprofit, our mission is to empower women to understand what all their surgery options, and then make an informed choice for their body. And then we support caregivers as well. And
do you feel like there's people that, like the system, the medical system pushes women to get implants, or is that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And why do you think that is?
I think the obvious is money. And, how do we restore a woman and get her looking back to what she's supposed to look like?
Sure.
I mean, let's talk about what a woman's supposed to look like, right? I mean, why is a woman supposed to look like that? And so I think the whole flatty movement is really defying the stereotypes and the taboos of being flat.
Yeah, and I think you told me an interesting story that you went to Katy Trail, which is it's a walking
trail right by my place.
Yeah. And yeah, you can tell us a bit about that.
I'm very shy. I'm like none of the three of you. Very still conservative.
I don't know what that means, because I prance around in bikini on stage.
I'm just like, I think you'll now I can say that I have a lot more courage, but I was kind of more of the timid, quiet sister. I was Fazia's little sister, but having no boobs have given me a sense of freedom and autonomy that I never thought I would ever have. And so walking this trail, I had this bright idea, like, because I saw a guy who was walking shirtless, like it's 36 degrees. And I'm like, why can he walk without a shirt? The police are not after him saying he's inappropriate.
Right.
And I'm like, what if I did that? So I just took my shirt right over my head, and I think I had it off for like 10 minutes, and I was walking, and people were looking at me, and I had a good cry.
Say, so did you? Yeah.
I cried.
And why did you cry? Because you were missing your breast, or you cried because you were feeling free, or?
Because I was feeling free, because I was so proud of how courageous I was, and I didn't have a friend even who walking alongside me.
Yeah.
And
That's
just
pretty amazing.
Well, my
you
BFF,
did have your friend.
I did have my friend. He doesn't like to reveal himself. He's not a big show off, but yeah,
Amazing. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you went from this amazing story of having breast cancer and having your, a life-changing experience, to now deciding that you're going to change your profession from what you were before to being a end-of-life doula. I mean, I'm still trying to digest that as your older sister, because you're exposed to so much emotion and energies, and I don't know, I always feel like it's a very heavy place to be. And just as being a protective older sister, I always wish that, you did something a little different and a little lighter. But, we all know that if there's one person who can handle this and has the strength to do it, it's you. But before I go into too much of my older sister emotional stuff, tell us what an end-of-life doula is.
Yeah, so an end-of-life doula or a death doula is somebody who provides non-medical support to a person who's dying. Mm-hmm. That would entail, for example, emotional support, mental support, practical support, physical support, but it's all non-medical.
Okay.
Provide that safe space. So
you help. So in other words, you help the dying and their family to transition into the next phase with ease. Is that correct?
Pretty much. It's more. It's focused on the individual who's dying themselves. Mm-hmm. But what I also realized, while that's the immediate job profile for a death doula, what I realized after working for a hospice in Dallas is that people aren't ready to die.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of people, some are, people with a terminal disease will get to that point where they're like, they know it's time and they may very well be at peace, but it's their family members that really struggle. And so you realize that your role has so many layers to it, because especially if it's time for hospice, those conversations need to be nurtured and you need to hold space. Because if a patient is ready and the family members are not, where do you get those two to meet?
Or the other, I guess the other way around.
Or the other way around.
Because I guess maybe they're older, or they've got to that point in their life where they're unable to take care of themselves.
Right.
When you say that they're hospice, is that like an old people's home? Like what's
No,
a hospice?
so hospice is actually a service.
Okay.
You can have in like a hospice facility where you go and die there.
Right.
Or like the way they do it in the US, hospice can come to you, the hospice service can come to you.
Okay.
So if the person is dying and their wishes are to die at home, then a nurse and an aide and all of those hospice services can be brought here. The point is, during the hospice stage, during that end of life stage, is to make that patient comfortable.
I wonder if we have, I'm going to throw that out there. Do we have this hospice service in Kenya? And if somebody does know of a hospice service, if you can just please leave a comment. It'd be really great to be able to touch base with people in Kenya to see if we do have that service here.
Yeah, actually, so, the guidebook that I wrote up, I was actually doing that with Mom this morning, by the way. I wanted to make sure I do that with her. And so I casually looked. And so, yes, there are, from what I saw, my quick 2-second research, is there are hospice facilities here. What that entails and how they're structured, I would be really eager to find out. I'm also curious about, because over there we have palliative services and hospice. And so palliative is kind of, the way it works over there is palliative is before hospice. So say, for example, you have a patient that has breast cancer and they are maybe doing 10 more rounds of radiation for pain management. So the way it works over there is, if you are on palliative service and your primary diagnosis for that palliative service is the breast cancer, that patient can continue the active treatment for the primary diagnosis. Does that make sense? So they can still do the 10 rounds of radiation,
right,
and then decide, okay, it hasn't worked, and then they would go into hospice. In Texas, once you get into hospice, you have to stop everything related to that active treatment.
Oh, okay.
So
that's like you've just decided. Okay,
you've accepted that there's nothing more that can be done.
Okay.
Now that is really hard, especially for caregivers, because if the patient feels so done,
right,
and just wants the next few days, weeks, or months, however long they have life, to be at peace and be at home and surrounded by loved ones and all of that, but the caregivers are struggling with that because they're like, well, maybe there's one more type of immunotherapy we can try. They're still holding on. And by and large, the reason why family members hold on is because they feel that accepting is less of accepting, but more of giving up.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't
maybe there's a
want to
guilt,
give
like if
up.
I give up on my parent, for example.
Exactly.
I'm not doing everything I could possibly do to make sure that they.
Exactly.
So how do you come into this? So for example, as a death doula,
Yeah.
somebody's in hospice or has decided that if we don't have hospice here, or whatever the way, that's the structure of it, the institution. But if you decided that I'm done with all my treatment and now I just want to ease into the next
stage
phase,
of my life,
Sure.
right? So I think the earlier we have these conversations, that I realize that it's all, okay, so I'm going to take it as a reaction versus a response. If somebody gets diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, for instance, we're going to be starting to react immediately, right? But if we had started to have this dialogue way before, like say, for example, I come to you with my tool and I say, hey, Faz, let's talk about what your end of life wishes would look like. The truth of the matter is not everybody is going to be diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Yeah.
We might be going home and get in a car crash.
Sure.
But we won't know what Fazia and Farahana's dying wishes were. And so the earlier we can have it, we have our cognitive brain still functioning. We still have the cognitive function of our brain. We can still make our decisions. We're still empowered to make those. And we can relay what those choices are to our loved ones. So that by the time comes, we're not trying to figure out what would this person have wanted. Because the truth of the matter, say something was happening with mom and you and Alicia live with her. Well, I come from Dallas like 7 years after, and I say, well, I think mom would want this. And you're like, well, where did you come from? Because you know nothing.
Right.
So what happens during the most delicate, sacred times where there's supposed to be peace and celebration of this person's life, the children or the siblings are now in conflict.
Right.
So we want
And they're not really thinking about the person who's going through this. The families having their own discrepancies and their own fights to say, let me assume what I know better, and I know that she would have or he would have wanted this.
Exactly. And the older sisters will say this, and the younger sisters will say this, and I was closer to mom this way. You know what I mean? And we just want each person to be able to articulate their wishes, and for their loved ones to be able to respect and make sure that that person goes with dignity and respect.
So I hear that you said that you have a tool, like a booklet or something that maybe people can purchase or people can use to help them to understand what their aging. It's not only aging, right? Like you said, it could be anyone, but for argument's sake, what their aging parent wishes would be. I mean, we talk about everything else. This is probably one of the most important things we should be talking about.
I mean, for everybody in our audience who is going to die, this conversation is for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's that simple.
And I think the questions are very important.
Yeah.
I mean, we have friends who've been diagnosed with cancer, like as kids, and I don't know. Actually, I don't even think I've ever asked, like, what is your dying wish? Like, what would you want? Because I think we almost bury our heads in the sand and say, if we don't talk about it, it won't happen. And that's completely untrue. So,
or like, why are you being so negative?
Yeah, so I'd really like people to be able to, contact you. Her social media and all her contact information will be on the podcast. So be able to contact you and say, you know what, can you actually help us? Maybe there's people out there, and everything can be done online now. So, maybe you can also help people while you're not here, since you have so much experience, to say, how do I help you to understand, one, what your wishes are, or what your parents or siblings or partners' wishes are.
Exactly.
And then how do I help you also, if you have a dying parent or an older parent, help you transition with your parent or with that person.
Absolutely. And so our program under our nonprofit is called Crossover Well. And so we address, end of life readiness.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. It's
I think
end of
that's
life
been
readiness.
really important for me.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to be able to, put my wishes. I think the only thing I've ever said is that when I die, I want you guys to have burgers at my funeral. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Really?
No.
I wrote it down.
Is that burgers from a particular place?
No,
or?
I think like because in our culture you usually have the rice and the chicken, the akni.
akni,
And I
right.
really don't like akni.
Because you've
So
always called
akni is
it
kind of
yakini.
like a pilau, right?
Yeah, pilau with some kind of meat, chicken or
And
beef.
I
or
remember as a kid, maybe not as a kid, like as a teenager,
Yeah.
I remember writing in a book like what I wanted after I died. Hey, I was doing this when I was really
You
young.
were already planning the food.
I was.
It's the most
I was at
important
least
part.
planning the food, and I think I really the two things. I
Hopefully,
don't
it's
know.
not the reason why people attend the funeral.
I mean,
because of the food.
it would be okay if they did. It could just be like a big party with people like
gonna be great
eating
food
burgers.
there.
And at the time, I was just like, they could be having tequila. I might change the tequila to something else.
Let's gate crash.
Maybe protein shakes, pure protein shakes. My brand, pure protein shakes and burgers.
Knock yourself out with a grand plan.
Yeah, so if somebody needs to write this down. I need to write this down. But yeah, I think even something as seemingly mundane. No, what's the word I'm looking for? Like mediocre.
Just
what's the
the
word?
smallest little details of it.
But there's words like.
Yeah, just being really meticulous about. Like,
No, that's not the word, but
not
that's fine.
meticulous.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll try
But
to put it in
the most
post-production.
Yeah, but the most little details of what you want.
Yeah.
Like I was telling Mom, I'm like, if you are in a position, if somebody's in a position where they're laying in bed and they can't bathe themselves, listen, I'm going to be like, there are these wipes that you get at Target, and they have a slight scent to it, and I need you to wipe my bottom and every other part,
Oh, please don't use scented ones on me.
Yeah, I know yours would be non-scented.
Thank you.
Yeah. But like a lotion or like if it's incense.
So you go through, like, I mean, on a more serious note, you go through all of this in your toolbook.
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
What is I want my hair washed every other day.
Absolutely.
This. Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really
I want to
interesting.
be outside a window that faces a forest or, and where and how that's possible. Right? If it's not possible, because somebody might want to, if I'm in Dallas and I want to come back home to Kenya, I mean, that's a plan in action that you want to make sure
that happened to our grandfather, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he had Alzheimer's and dementia and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah. And the only thing he would ever say and remember is that I want to go to Nairobi. Yeah. I want to go home. I want to go home. Yeah. And that's our connection with Kenya.
Right.
That even our grandfather on his dying day couldn't even remember his own kids' names.
And he was calling out for
Mom. And he was calling out for Nairobi.
Yeah, that's true.
And he was like, that's where I want to go. And then we brought him here. Dad brought him here. And I think within a few months, he passed away. Like he just wanted to pass away on Kenyan soil.
Yeah.
So I guess this is stuff that, you would cover on your toolkit. I'm calling it a toolkit for lack of a better word, but you'd cover that.
Yeah, end of life readiness.
Yeah. Amazing.
But I do want to go back because you said, we kind of chuckled and laughed about the heaviness around death, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why are you doing something so heavy? And I just, you asking that question, why something so heavy, right, is a reflection. And it's fine because a lot of people have that, is seeing death as something so heavy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I think I'll just touch on the experience I had recently. Yeah. I did a plant medicine journey, and in that journey, I asked God, is this my sister's calling? Like she has to be a death doula. And I said, hey, how about a birth doula? Like that's kind of cool because, you're bringing life into the world. And God specifically said, no, this is your calling and this is your path. But I think that's a really important point is we see death as being heavy and negative and like the end of something. And really it can be just a beautiful passing into whatever is next.
Birthing into another world,
right? Right.
So just that transition. And I mean, we have a time constraint. Obviously this interview has to end at some point, but what I will say is that the individuals that I have had the privilege and honor of being by their side and helping them transition, and the conversations that I've had with them, and the family relationships that I've built with them, even after their loved one has passed. I mean, I can't tell you the blessings of the work that I do. It's so sacred and it's so fulfilling and it's so humbling, because it's like you meet these people from all ages and from all walks of life, and I've come from my walk of life and they've come from theirs. And to think that that one last month before they leave this world, you have been invited to be a part of that last journey.
Wow.
It's just,
I'm sure. I think this has been life-changing. I think especially the two things that you've said. One is your relationship with your body and the traumas that come with that whole concept has been really important to understand. And also your relationship with how you see death. I think that's been a really beautiful shift in how I see end of life or beginning of new life, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, is there any final words that you might want to say to someone who might be going through either one of these things that you've gone through, like either some sort of a disease or dealing with a parent or a loved one that is transitioning? Maybe you can just share a few words that might make them feel better.
I think I want to address that if you have recently been diagnosed, whether it's with any type of cancer or another illness, and there's a fear associated of dying from it, is don't jump into that fear-based thought that you'll die. You know, allow yourself to be, you know, a little bit more open and curious about it, because what I've come to understand is we're given so many opportunities in life to live life to the fullest and completely, and to show up in the very best way that you can. I think that we are oftentimes searching for that purpose. What is my purpose in life? What is my purpose in life? Your purpose in life is to go and stand in Uchumi in the lineup and be the best version of yourself.
I love the fact that you just said Uchumi.
Is it still in existence?
No.
Okay. You know,
but that was really cute.
That was
very cute.
That's how long ago it's been, right?
It's okay, people know Uchumi.
Okay, go to Zucchini, which is not, what's the grocery store?
I mean, you could go to Nakamat or
like... Go to Nakamat. Go to Nakamat.
Actually, Nakamat doesn't exist either. Oh my goodness.
Okay, go to the grocery
store.
Go to your closest grocery store.
Go to Carrefour. Go to
the closest grocery store, because you might be in another country. So Uchumi is, it doesn't matter, you know? But go, like, just show up in the best way possible in that moment. That is your purpose, because you never know who's standing next to you and what they need, right? And living life knowing that you are exactly where you're meant to be and being invited to show up in the best possible way, knowing that's your purpose, when you're more conscious about that and you embody that in your everyday, when you consciously live, you consciously die. If you live continuously in fear, in a state of anxiety and a state of judgment, then when the cancer diagnosis shows up, you will be anxious and you'll be judgy and you'll be all the three things that I just said, right? So, you know, if you're diagnosed with cancer, be curious about it. You will have more of a curiosity about death rather than a fear of death. So don't fear cancer, be curious about it. Don't fear death, be curious about death.
Brilliant.
You know?
That's lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Those are some epic last words.
Listen, the gray hair didn't come from nowhere.
That's a story for another day for sure.
Thank
you so much. That was probably one of my favorite episodes so far.
Yay. Thanks.
And if you guys have any questions, anything whatsoever, whether it's disease, whether it's cancer, whether it's death, if you're going through anything like this, please reach out to us. Farahana is going to be on this, responding to messages and just being supportive as she always has been. And if anyone wants to understand more about her toolkit, please send us a DM and we'll tell you more.
And one more thing, if you love anything about me today and you're more curious about our nonprofit, Flaunt That Revolution, then we'll have the website on the description of this podcast episode. Please, 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 any amount of donation that you can give to our nonprofit will go a long way to help somebody who's struggling with breast cancer, a caregiver, and be able to really help us pay for art retreats, because we don't want money to hold people back from not participating in community and creating.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
you're welcome.
brilliant. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as I did. It was very emotional and had so many important nuggets. Please share this with anyone that's going through either breast cancer or has anyone who has a disease or is transitioning through this life. This is a super important topic. So if you know anyone who needs to hear this, please send them this episode, share, and don't forget to subscribe.